And welcome back everyone to Creator in Conversation. I am your host, Owen McCauley. Since 2011, I've been making comics, teaching how to make comics, and this podcast, by extension, is sharing some of the conversations we have with leading industry experts. Today's conversation is with Bob Greenberger. Bob is an amazing wealth of knowledge within the field. He's held editorial positions in both Marvel and DC, and more recently he is working with Crazy 8 Press and really go into great detail about Crazy 8. You might have heard about Crazy 8 already on this podcast thanks to our conversation with Paul Kupperberg. I just want to take this moment to acknowledge the sad passing of Peter David. This conversation was recorded prior to his passing, and Bob would have worked with Peter as part of the Crazy 8 collective. So thoughts and wishes to the family, friends and fans of Peter David. Today's conversation with Bob it was a wonderful conversation to have. He was able to discuss a couple of characters we had in common, Sherlock Holmes, the Phantom, and we're also able to talk about our love of the pulps as well, and Bob's work on some new pulp stories also. So sit back, relax and enjoy this conversation and creating conversation with Bob Greenberger. Fantastic. So welcome back everyone to another episode of Creator in Conversation. Joining us today is Mr. Bob Greenberger. How are you today, Bob?
Doing fine, thanks. How about yourself, Owen?
Great. Yeah, the sun is actually out here in fine form here in Dublin, which is a rare occasion. So for us, I think we're officially counting it as summer here now at the moment.
Excellent.
Thanks so much for joining to speak with us today. It's great because we had just recently a couple of, actually it'll be 2 months ago in March, spoke with Mr. Paul Kupperberg, and just last weekend we finished up an interview with Elliot S. Magan as well. So we've been slowly moving in the circles of your peers and colleagues.
Yeah, fine human beings.
And so how's everything going in terms of Crazy 8 at the moment? That's an interesting venture that I think I discovered you guys via a good friend of mine, John Suttress, of the Woodland podcast. Yeah. He had several of yous on in the past, and just fill us in a little bit about Crazy 8 and what the mission statement is there.
We're about 12 years old, and it was decided as digital publishing was becoming a reality, publishers who couldn't conceive of sharing the same passion we had for some of our projects, and we were being told, I don't know how to market, I love it, but I don't know how to market it, or, we don't think there's an audience for this. One of our members, Peter David, was told that, and again, this is 2011 or so, Peter David's being told, men can't write vampire stories somehow because of the interest in the Sookie Stackhouse type of the vampire novels. And, Peter looked at them like, who wrote Dracula? It was a guy. So we were dealing with that kind of mentality that was just driving us all bonkers. And we recognized that digital publishing was a new avenue for us to come out with things that we were passionate about, that we felt our readers might pick up on that passion, and explore things that mainstream publishing was timid or incapable of handling. So it is the loosest of confederations of authors. We share the Crazy 8 imprint, and we publish our material by ourselves. So there's like no financial stake in it. And when people approach us and they're hoping we will publish this stuff, we go, well, there's no money for an advance. And they went, huh? We support each other. We've got people who are really good at book design, and so they do that. Some of us are good book editors, so we do that. We write for each other's anthologies. We support each other on social media. And the Crazy 8 website is the hub for all of our material. So if you're interested in one of us, you go there. Hopefully you will see all of our other books, and it's all listed alphabetically. It's not segregated by author. We have about 80 titles at present, and we publish hopefully 8 to 10 titles a year, and everybody contributes.
No, it's an amazing approach to publishing as well. because I find one of the subjects I teach is a subject called brand and marketing, and I teach it to design-based students. So my preference, main focus would be animation and games, but also we teach interior design, fashion students, architecture. And a lot of them at the start of the semester, like, well, why do I need to learn about brand and marketing or any type of entrepreneurship? But what we discovered was within the manufacturing sector, whereas the arts would be counted, the large majority were educated at third level, like doctorate, but didn't have any grounding in business. And then what you just described there, they're at the mercy then of big business who are like, I don't know how to market this. But when you kind of liberate yourself and go, well, all it really is like if we cross promote, if we share, if we create the platform, you can take it direct to the consumer. You can cut that whole middle process out. And it does seem to be you mentioned this is about 12 years ago. Now that does seem to be the main priority now. That's the main model, I think, in the publishing world, which is as direct to the reader, direct consumer as possible, seems to be the best approach.
Well, it's a successful approach. Best is hard, that's in the eye of the beholder, because the mainstream publishers are still out there and a lot of small presses have started up as well. And these days, the power of the internet is allowing even the independent bookstores to band together through bookstore.org, so that everybody, has a way to reach their local audiences. But branding has become increasingly important because if you're going to publish your own work as a game or piece of animation, or in my case, a novel, who are you? What is your imprint? What do you stand for? And the look and feel of your website and your business card and your appearance at conventions or, whatever meetups there are. It's important that people at a glance know, all right, you are this. You stand for this kind of storytelling. The 10 of us who make up Crazy 8 today could have 10 different imprints and work on our own. We think the 10 of us coming together in a website gives support. And I think that's the biggest difference between going individually and doing something that we've been doing. But it's increasingly important. I teach at the Maryland Institute College of Arts called MICA. It's, I believe, America's oldest art school, and teach a course on making graphic novels. But there's also a professional development course that most of the seniors feel obligated to take because it teaches them how to do a website, how to do your business branding, and as well as, especially for Americans, what's deductible as a freelancer, what's not deductible, how to file taxes. It's an invaluable course, and the course I teach is predominantly for seniors, and they all talk about what they're doing in the other class, and it sounds invaluable.
No, absolutely, and it's great to hear because that it's often overlooked because, of course, everyone wants to be in the creative process, writing, drawing, producing, but this is so important. This is where the future is, at least your individual future, the future of one's career is knowing about this and enriching themselves. I actually checked out the Crazy 8 website just before we began this call, and I have to say your FAQ section is perhaps one of the best I've seen, because not only do you succinctly link the frequently asked questions, but underneath there's a comment section, and I can see people are asking questions and the Crazy 8 members are responding. That's so good to see, because often people have these websites and, it's like just a little text box, submit your email here, and you could be, God knows where it will go into the void. But
that goes credit to Glenn Hellman, who is probably the most business savvy of the 10 of us. And when we were building the website years ago, we recognized the need for that, especially for people who want to come to us and have us publish their works, and trying to explain to them what's involved and why we are very limited on that.
And so do you guys have much in the way of a submission window, or is it more that you will focus? So you have your 10 members, and if, say, someone else comes along and says they want to pitch and they understand, okay, there's no There's no royalty. There's no immediate stake into it. It's a publishing platform. Is there an avenue for that, or at the moment is everything the publishing schedule kind of locked in for the foreseeable future?
Oh, it's not locked. It's incredibly fluid because all but one or two of us are full-time day workers. We have jobs and do our writing on nights and weekends. And we think we're going to make a book come out on a specific date. And sometimes we're successful, other times not so much. Because we're a loose confederation and we trust one another, we're all friends, we periodically will say, hey, a buddy of mine is looking to place this manuscript. And we talk about what it is and why we should, lend our support. We did that maybe once a year, once every 18 months. It's not like there's a submission window. In one case, Mike Friedman brought in Christopher D. Abbott to publish a science fiction novel. And we got to know Chris and really like him. And even though Chris has his own individual company and imprint for his Sherlock Holmes pastiches, we liked his contributions to our various Crazy 8 Press projects and invited him to be, a member, and he joined us last year. So it's really just as loose as everything else we do.
Yeah, fantastic. And you mentioned Sherlock Holmes. You had a Sherlock story yourself. It was a Sherlock, forgetting on it now myself.
That was through Titan Books, yes.
Titan Books, oh yes, there's a...
Yeah, co-wrote that with Stephen Seville about, 2010, 2011. Murder at Tsar's Crown, and that was a lot of fun. Had a weird origin story, how it got done, but it was an immensely satisfying opportunity. And most recently, I wrote a long short story for featuring Holmes again for one of Chris Sabat's Sherlock Holmes anthologies, and that'll be out in July.
I think I could be wrong now, but I think one of my colleagues, Derek Tyler Attica, might have contributed to that as well.
Possibly. Yeah, I mean, Christopher does one or two a year, and it's 4 long pieces together. So I don't think I'm in the same one as Derek, but yeah, no, Derek is written for Christopher as well.
God, no, that's great
for me. So
yeah, it's like
it's recognize good talent.
it's so funny, like, as in some of these conversations, we'll say, well, the industry is a lot smaller than you think, and it's true. We're only a year in with the academy, but when we speak with people, we realize, oh yeah, we know such and such and such and such. But Sherlock stood out to me because I worked on Sherlock myself briefly. We did a kind of a short comic adaptation with Dublin Comic Con. We had Mike Collins, who's the storyboard artist for the BBC show Sherlock. He did the Reichenbach Fall scene for me, and unknown to me at the time, the Abominable Bride episode, which the Reichenbach scene actually appears, was in it, and I didn't realize, like, oh my God, we auctioned off the artwork for charity. It was great. But and then also, cause another character I worked on in animation this time was Zorro, and I noticed you also have you've done some work with Zorro as well. Was it
right?
Was it?
Moonstone Books out of Chicago, New York, Illinois. Sorry. Joe Gentile at Moonstone was the rights holder to Zorro at the time and wanted to do a prose anthology. And it was a marvelous opportunity to do a character I grew up on and really enjoyed. My first exposure to him was the old black and white Disney series when it was a rerun in America in the 60s. So writing that short story was good times.
Oh, it's great. That's
a character.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. It's great to see in the Moonstone anthologies that have been great. And I must speak out with some of the more Moonstone people. Now they're going back. I work on another character, the Phantom, and those guys seem to be doing
now there. I see the Phantom over your shoulder there.
Oh yeah, I've been framed. I forgot. I just put that up.
And I grew up with the Phantom in my local the comic section of the newspaper growing up, and I've loved the character ever since. One of the best known artists for the Phantom, Cy Barry, actually lived in my neighborhood and had the pleasure of going over and interviewing him for a fanzine. And, when we were like 9th or 10th graders in high school. And he was a nice enough guy, and he gave us one Sunday strip that we shared.
Oh, well.
My friend and I had gone over to do the interview, and that was very generous of him. Um, yeah, so I loved the character. I edited his comic adventures at DC for a year, which was one of the highlights. I think the work that Mark Verheiden and Luke McDonald did on that series was just superb.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny enough. So we have a relationship here with King Feature Syndicate, and what we do is we reprint the newspaper strips. Currently we have Dan Scotty's Flash Gordon, which we translate into Irish. We print the Phantom into English, and we do Popeye as well. And we've just been approved for supplemental magazines because basically we got a lot of strips, but we only had one page in the local newspaper to put them in. And I was like, well, would you guys mind if we turned it into a magazine? We could fit it in. But what's great is our students, we give them the chance to if we do a content page, they can draw Flash Gordon, I can draw the Phantom. But speaking aside, Barry, and this is like yet to be fully revealed, but his son David reached out to me there recently about doing a kind of a coffee book approach on his father's work. And in early days,
That'd be amazing.
yeah, he has all the material. The way we're looking to do it is breaking it down into chapters and pre-releasing the chapters as like a digital magazine, and then physical, and then collecting it then towards the end. It's just trying to anticipate, what might happen with tariffs or this or that, which is, everyone's kind of wondering at the moment. Publishing seems to be unaffected, like anything in print, but if it's not printed and folded, it's up for grabs at tariffs. Like recently, the comic book bag and boards now have been hit with 150%, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a volatile situation. Keep doing the book because I want to read it.
Oh yeah, don't worry, absolutely.
About a year and a half, I had sent my sketchbook down to Cy to do a Phantom sketch for me. And they came back a little risque, which really made me laugh.
Very good.
What is he, 97, 98 years old now, and he's still having a good time with that stuff?
Absolutely, yeah. He has that. He just has that kind of that spark and that twinkle in the eye as well as he does it. I was fortunate to meet him with Alex Saviuk at New York Comic Con a couple of years back. I think it must have been 2018, 2017. And he was there with the National Cartoonists Society there. Yeah, just lovely, lovely guy. And you mentioned you're teaching with Micah, you were saying. I recently had Anthony Marquise down here for Dublin Comic Con and on the podcast from the Kubert School. And I was asked, we were just discussing, because obviously we're about in education. And one of the things is the type of fields that we work in, it's very, it's arts-based. And I'm always fascinated by, well, how do you go about grading such a process? Like, how do you inherently go, well, this is good, this is bad? Where's the subjectivity into it? Because the way we work on a system here in Ireland is called QQI, Qualities and Qualifications of Ireland. It's a National Framework Qualifications, NFQ. And formative feedback has been so important for students, which is if they do an assignment, try to give them 2 assignments in 2 parts, like part 1, part 2, so they can have formative feedback, implement changes and notes, so it's not all just on one assignment. And then they're like, well, to get to the grade, they want like a quantitative table where you go like, this is like 10%, 20%. And then I'm like, well, if I was teaching accountancy or chemistry, 2 + 2 is 4. That's irrefutable. Yeah. But when it's the arts, I'm like, it's a little bit trickier, because then it's like, okay, maybe I can look at spelling and grammar and format. That's, again, irrefutable. But the rest is always something, as a teacher, I find myself going back and wondering how best to measure and give the feedback onto it. For yourself, because you have the experience about editor and teacher, what's your approach to that grading approach to it like?
That's a good question. And honestly, the coursework I'm doing at Micah is, as I mentioned before, aimed at seniors, and it's like a senior seminar. Jose Villarrubia, the great colorist, is the head of the illustration minor at Micah, and graphic illustration, I should say. And he had conceived of this course, but couldn't find the right person to teach it until we ran into each other at the Baltimore Comic-Con after I moved down here. And he said, you live near Baltimore? I said, yeah. And he said, I've got something for you. And invited me to come in as an adjunct professor to teach the course because of my editing experience, because I have to work with these people. The course requirement is writing and drawing and lettering a 30-page story over the course of one semester, which is 15 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first thing they do is come in with the story pitch, and they do a presentation to the entire class on day one, and along with a proposed schedule, which is the first thing that goes away. And I make a schedule, and it goes right out the window. But it gives me an opportunity to work with them on story structure and motivation, make sure that they consider the beginning, middle, and end. What do these characters want? What are the obstacles? And once we get that done, they start drawing, and everyone's, draws. Some are doing traditional pen and ink on paper, others are doing digital, others are mixing the two so that they can add tones. Most are doing digital lettering. And we meet every Wednesday night, and I sit down one-on-one with them, and I look at their week's work, and we critique. And the rest of the time is supposed to be critiquing each other. Peer review is important. And there, I have to put any of my personal aesthetic tastes aside, because the styles of these 15 to 18 kids a semester is wildly different. A lot of manga influence and a lot of other styles. And it's, for me, being an old guy, it is an eye-opening experience to see who their influence is, because I grew up on traditional DC and Marvel superheroes and learned other styles along the way. And there's like this much that's traditional in my sense. So I have to put that aside. So my grading has to be, are they telling a compelling story and is it visually presented over the 30 pages? So are they telling a story? Are they doing 30 finished pages by the end of the semester? And I have to grade on the completeness of the work. Some get a little sketchy towards the end. Some say, well, my story is 35 pages long, but I only finished the 30. So how do I grade an incomplete story? Yes, they met the 30-page requirement, but the story's not over. So a lot of subjectivity. I can't grade any two people the same way. Class ended on Wednesday. The final files are due actually this afternoon, and I'll spend the weekend reading all their stories and figuring out what to grade them.
Yeah, that's it. It's always interesting I know it's a shock talk among teachers, but it does fascinate me, particularly when it's in the arts, because I think when you're a teacher, particularly teaching anything that's like art-based, you sometimes you're doing it in a vacuum, the grading process, and then you often have questions of like, you look at so much, I have to take constant breaks in between, because as you said, no two students are really the same, and you kind of want to take breaks in between so that I'm not carrying over something I've read from this piece into this grading piece, and that just fascinates me. In your career as a editor and writer, then how have you found that walking between the line or transition between those two roles, from switching from like writer to editor, where you're looking at, because I assume with the editor you're looking at the overall final piece and the whole production pipeline. With a writer, obviously more focused in the scripts and back and forth collaboration with your, the artist who's working with you on it. But have you found you have a unique perspective, having been both an editor and a writer, when it comes towards producing your work?
As a comic book editor, you're putting on many, many hats. You're working with the writer, you're working with the artist, you're working on the letterer, the colorist, the production department, the marketing department, licensing, and so on. So, you're there championing the book, and you've got multiple titles on your schedule at any given time, and you're doing multiple issues of any title at any given time while your writer is writing the script. It's all he's doing that day. So you have to be able to be nimble and be able to, switch hats really quickly, which has been helpful at Micah, where I'm going from a horror story to a science fiction story to this style to that style. So that's been good. And what I've discovered is I've been exposed to a lot of different storytelling techniques from the writers as well as the artists. And as a writer on my own for prose, and because I have done very few comic stories, so this is just for the prose, I look at how they do motivation and transition and dialogue, get inspired by their work. And as an editor of prose, it's all about story. When people give me their manuscripts to review, sometimes I've already seen the synopsis, other times I'm seeing the manuscript cold, and therefore I'm reading it and I'm like, all right, this story makes sense to me. The character's consistent. Is the writing solid? So some of it's a little bit about grammar and spelling. Some of it's about story structure. And there are times I'm going, well, you said this here, but that happens there. Which is it? And the writer goes, oh, yeah, good point. So paying attention to those kind of details is invaluable. And that you learn from, especially in comics where, the guy's got a striped tie on page 1. He's got to have a striped tie on page 12. You're looking for all that visual detail. And those are lessons that apply everywhere.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just prior to coming onto the call as well, what I like to do is with a guest is look at the bookshelves, see what do we have, that everyone's walked on. And of course, I had to double take because I realized you literally wrote the encyclopedia on Batman. I just don't think, wait a minute. Usually I hold the book up. I was like, I'm not going to take that off the shelf right now. And also with the late, great Marty Pesco as well, you did the Superman, which is amazing. And that must have been a very intimidating project to take on, to vast amount of information.
I wouldn't say intimidating because I grew up on that, and I read the comics. I knew them really, really well. Mm-hmm. It really was doing the research. It was really condensing their histories. If you had a character who appeared in a couple of stories, it was fairly easy to condense. But trying to explain Batman or Commissioner Gordon through all the incarnations they've had through the multiverse, you had to, make it digestible to a reader.
Yeah.
And, it was always on Earth 1 before the crisis, it was like this. And then we had Earth 2. And then after the crisis, it was like this. And thankfully, when the Batman book came out in 2008 or so, we hadn't had things like Infinite Crisis and Final Crisis that restarted the multiverse, so I didn't have to worry about new incarnations.
Yeah.
What we discovered was that, I had done the Batman book, which became the template. Marty Pasco and then Phil Jimenez came in behind me. And Phil had his own take on it, but Marty was trying to do what I did, and it was not what he was good at. He was a great writer of Superman stories and a great lover of the Superman lore, but condensing it down became a challenge. He got bogged down, and I had to step in to help write a chunk of the book with him to get it done because there are publishing schedules.
Yep, this is it. Sometimes it's you get lost in the passion of the project as well. So you were saying you grew up reading these comics. So you're obviously a lifelong fan. What was your secret origin to quote unquote breaking into the industry? Like, how did you transition from being a fan to suddenly working for companies like DC and Marvel?
The 1970s was a really great time to be a fan. You had the birth and growth of conventions around the nation, but it all started in New York with the Phil Seuling July 4th weekend shows. And there weren't so many people crowding the hallways of the Statler Hilton Hotel where you could run into a writer or an artist and have a conversation with them. And it was about conversation. It wasn't sketches and autographs. Just, I really like this. I mean, one of the great experiences I had was sitting in the back of a ballroom having Jerry Conway explain to me why he killed Gwen Stacy, all the story reasons behind it. And I'm sitting there as a fan going, this is cool. And this is the era where fanzines were the internet of the day, where fanzines, where people would write in and review books or interview talent or argue back and forth, who was the greatest Spider-Man artist of all time or whatever. And there were the fanzines that covered the news of the industry. There was Newfangles from Don and Maggie Thompson. There was Comic Reader, which was Mark Hannafeld, inherited by Paul Levitz in the 1970s. And a lot of these people were starting to get known by the publishers. And so a guy like Paul Levitz, gets invited to write letter columns for DC, which becomes a staff job, which becomes an executive at the company. And other people broke in as writers, as the horror anthologies and westerns and war books were looking for new writers, new artists. And you had this explosion of talent in the 68 to 72 range who were right on the cusp of, getting work. So they were doing work for the Jim Warren books or, the Web of Horror, the competitors like that. And then Joe Orlando was starting to hire them for House of Mystery and House of Secrets. And it was like this whole new wave of talent coming in. And on the writing side, you had Len Wein, Mark Wolfman, Mike Friedrich, starting to, break down the siloed editor. They were starting to write for multiple editors, which wasn't the case back in the 60s. And they were writing for DC and they were writing for Marvel. And fans were getting the opportunities to break in. And in my case, because of my friendship with Paul Levitz and Paul Kupperberg through the conventions, when I was graduating college in 1980 and I was being hired by Starlight Press, my job wasn't going to start until September. I needed to pay the rent after graduating college in May. Levitz put me on as summer help at DC. And that gave me a couple months to get to know everybody. So I went to Starlog, and when the publications I was working on changed and I was stuck on wrestling and boxing magazines, which are not exactly my forte or my interest, I met with Dick Giordano and said, hire me, please, please, please. A few months later, he finally had the opportunity to bring me on to work on Crisis and Who's Who with Len Wein and Marv Wolfman. But it was the 70s, was this foundational period where seeds are sown, connections are made, networks are being built in a way that hadn't been done in comics prior to that.
Okay. That's it. And would you say, this is a question, because you mentioned Paul Kupperberg, who you spoke with, and one of the questions I had with Paul was about the possibility if he's today breaking in. Like, does he think, how would he think, would he have the same pathway, or do you, if he was to break into comics now or start his career, does he think it would happen the same way? And he was straight up, no, it's completely changed. And I suppose it's changed in interesting ways, because obviously there's a lot of the democratization of technology. People can now publish more, online. You can go onto Instagram or social media, or you could set up your own website. So there's more channels now to produce, and people around the world can connect. But it's almost like there's been a shift where it was the readers will go out looking for content, for stories, and now it's the story creators are going out looking for the audience, because there's so much out there.
If you think about it, there are so many different places than there had been in the 70s and the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
First of all the mainstream publishers have graphic art novel lines, and people are finding takers for their graphic novel stories. You've got people who are making very nice money through Kickstarter campaigns and are growing their audience that way. And that's led to a number of them to get hired by mainstream publishers, comic publishers. You've got so many small presses, so you've got your top tier companies, but below that, you still have dozens of small presses with a book or two or three, hoping for fame and fortune. But to me, writers and artists have more places to look to break in than there used to be. So yes, it's very different. Paul is absolutely right about that, but I see more opportunities.
Yeah. No, it's great to hear, because with regards to our students, some specialize. So we have folks who are just, they want to be writers, others who maybe see themselves as artists, more not afraid to do a bit of writing as well. But for the writers, particularly writing for comics, there's always it's much more difficult, because from a portfolio point of view, they can't show scripts. No one's going to sit down and read a script, but they could work on a short story. So we try and match them up. But as you were highlighting there is more opportunities now for them to put their content out there. A colleague of mine, good friend Sean Hill, has his Substack. And it was Shadows and Sorcery, and that goes out once a week, and it's great to see his journey, because he's doing a serialized novel, and then he does like short stories throughout, but just that consistency. And then sometimes he'd be begrudging about not so many clicks or readers, but I'm like, but that body of work, when he looks back on it, I'm just like, that's astounding though, that you have that now. And if you go back just 15 years, probably wouldn't have had a platform as good as that to collate it. And sometimes it's just a time game. You mentioned Kickstarter. Have you explored, or Crazy 8 explored much in the realm of crowdfunding?
Yes, we have. Over the last couple of years, we've done numerous Kickstarter campaigns because it guarantees there will be some revenue. It's one thing to write your own novel, put it out there, and hope somebody buys it. And then, word of mouth is the only way you're going to get it. Through a Kickstarter, at least there, you're going to have several hundred, and hopefully more than several hundred people backing your project, and you're guaranteed an audience, you're guaranteed some revenue, and then the book lives forever and helps to continue to generate revenue. In my case, I've been doing anthologies that celebrate the old pulp magazines from America in the 1920s and 30s. And Thrilling Adventure Yarns has tried to celebrate the old pulps with new writers doing new stories in the pulp style across the genres. And I've done 4 of these. All 4 have been successfully funded through Kickstarter. Unlike some of the comic stuff I've seen, and comics and prose are very different on Kickstarter, apparently. I've been hoping to grow the number of backers I've been getting through success and word of mouth, and changing the mix of the writers I bring in to write for it. That has not been the case. It's been kind of a roller coaster. Some of it is there are so many Kickstarter projects. The economy has changed. So I recognize that the stakes have changed. I'm thinking about doing a 5th and seeing if I can continue to grow it, because I still enjoy doing it.
No, absolutely. No, it's great. And with regards to the pulps, what made you go back to that, Sean? Because I'd be a fan myself with The Shadow, Doc Savage. We have a couple of them here, because I think it's Adventure House recently republished a lot of them, so it's been great to get a hold of. Tried in the past to do work with Condé Nast, but I don't know what they're holding now. I don't know what they're holding now for, with no disrespect to them, but their interesting approach to, I don't know how they plan to make money off those IPs, to be honest. But
well, they licensed The Shadow to James Patterson to reboot in a modern way, and I haven't read it, but everything I've read about it sounds terrible.
I read the first one. And it's like someone saw the Alec Baldwin film and just wrote from that. Honestly, that's what it was like.
Yeah,
and I read the Doc Savage isn't even, I don't know what they're, no disrespect. Listen, they got it published. It's respected writers behind the free book.
It's all about the ideas. And if the ideas aren't honoring the past, you may as well call it Fred.
Yep, that's it exactly. Yeah. So with your foray into pulps, what type of stories have you been telling with Thrilling Adventure Yarns?
Well, again, in the 1970s, it was a great time to be a reader, because Pyramid Books was reprinting the Shadow stories. The Bantam Books was doing the Doc Savage pulps in novel form, and therefore they were a great window into it. Lancet Books was doing the Robert E. Howard Conan and Cull and Solomon King books. So I was exposed to all this stuff at the same time. I was coming into my own as a reader of comics, teenager, and so I'm absorbing everything. And when I was thinking of a anthology idea for Crazy Eight, because we do try and do a variety of anthologies so we could all be in the same book together to bring our audiences with us.
Yeah.
I just hit on that idea of, honoring the pulps and said, let's go forward. I get really good feedback from the people who write for it, and I get a lot of other writers reach out and go, consider me for the next volume. So it goes on from there.
There you go. Oh, that's great. And do you assign like the pulps, like you're doing this type of setting, or did everyone just comes with their own pitch? Yeah.
I go out to everyone. I say, I invite you to the book. Here are the terms. Here's the schedule. Tell me what genre you're interested in. And I start keeping a list. And as people respond, every now and then someone goes, well, what do you light on? I could do this, this, or this. I go, well, I could really use more fantasy. So they'll do that. After the second volume and after the fourth volume, I did reader polls to figure out which genres they want more or less of, which has led me to drop aviation, war, and romance. This time around, what's really interesting is they want more science fiction. They want less science fiction. It's like all over the place with science fiction, but they definitely, there's a definite upsurge in interest in sword and sorcery, which I leaned into in the third volume, and probably will, look for more of that in the fifth.
Oh, excellent. And it's interesting to see with the, almost like pendulum tastes with audiences, because we're here talking on a podcast, and podcast is just radio. So radio's back in a big way. And then pubs as well, which would have had their peak popularity, characters like The Shadow and stuff spun out of the radio. Now it makes sense that pulp and pulp-esque stories would be popular again among readers. It's really interesting. It's all to do with even streaming and television. Everyone's like, oh, well, streaming will take off from television. Now they're putting ads back into streaming, and I'm like, what, like television? It's like...
Yeah, well, it's to make it affordable, because exactly. Jacking up the rates, so they came up with the ad tier because people used ads. And, my day job is a high school English teacher, and we were talking about media literacy the other day, and one of the kids started complaining about the number of ads in their Instagram feed. I said, well, you're not paying for it. Would you rather pay for it? Oh, no. So,
yeah, this is it. It's amazing how audience, like kids, they just... I have a nephew and niece, 6 and 3, and if there's something on TV and there's an ad, they're instantly like, "Where's the skip button? Where's the skip button? No, this is television." I noticed as well that you contributed to the Superman: The Definitive History text,
right,
as well onto it. So I was just curious. Obviously, we're heading into this summer, Superman as well. You looking forward to the new offering coming from James Gunn? Any interest? Have you been following the films at all?
Yes, I have. When the first trailer broke a couple of months ago, I was watching it like everybody else, but at the first electric guitar note, imitating the John Williams theme, I said, all right, he gets it. He's honoring the past with a fresh spin on it. The title treatments were the same as the Superman film, just a modern take on it. And, who doesn't love crypto?
Exactly.
To bring things full circle, by the way, Cy Barry was one of the artists on the first crypto story. So,
yeah, he inked it. I think it was out of Binder, and he inked it. Yeah, that's exactly. It's amazing. I wonder. I say James Gunn has been good at giving shout outs to a lot of the creators. I wonder if when it comes time, will he give a shout out to Cy as well? But
he knows his comics. Based on what I've seen, it looks like it's a back to basics story about who Superman is, his very essence of a character of hope. A guy who was raised on the best of American values, which is, very much do unto others as you will have others do unto you, serve your community, do what's right. It looks like it's going to be there. I hope it's a good threat. I hope it's got good dialogue. We'll find out more in just a couple of months.
Yeah, no, it's true. Blink when we miss it,
Are you going to July 11th like we are?
I think so. Yeah, I think it comes out internationally. It drops at the same time. It's curious. We sometimes get advanced screenings or premiere events. So like there's Warner Brothers based here in Dublin, there's Warner Brothers in London, and they usually do like fan and advanced screenings. But I think it's a drop on the 11th.
Okay.
And we had an editor. I won't say names in case I'm not meant to know, but it was an editor who was over who, while visiting the Academy, jumped over to London where they were filming Supergirl and got to, meet all the actors and what was going on. So it's good to see the synergy between, the comic creators and the film. It's good to see, because I think that was something which in previous offerings there might not have been as much crossover, but now
right. I mean, as far as I know, DC actually brought over a group of writers and artists known for their work on Superman to be on the Superman set. I can only imagine Tom King, whose Supergirl story is the basis of the Supergirl film, has also been over there to see what the company is up to. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens there, because that's the first real sense of the wider mythos.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's usually a famine or feast of fans in these occasions where you wait and then suddenly it's like huge offerings. We have the Fantastic Four as well coming out just, I think, like 2 weeks after Superman.
Yes.
I'm like, Mark Waid must be like, pinch me, what's going on? Everything he's worked on seems to be coming up on the big screen.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's worked on so many characters over so many years, and it's hard to have a year without something he's been involved in.
Exactly. And for yourself, Bob, what's next on the horizon? So what can folks look out for, and what do you currently have out? What can folks look for in the near future?
The most recent book that came out was the Superman, The Definitive History, co-written with Ed Gross, that came out in December. Mm-hmm. Next up is the Sherlock Holmes long story in Cases by Candlelight, Volume 4, which will debut in July. I need to be writing a Sword and Sorcery short story using characters I created in the third volume of Thrilling Adventure Yards for a project that's just come up. And the goal this summer is actually to work on an original novel. I've not written an original novel yet for Crazy 8 and for myself. So I've been working on world building and character development in bits and pieces when my school schedule allows. But my obligation is to school end June 6th. So June 7th, it's back to the keyboard.
That really is the way, because I'm 2 years and 2 months behind on the script I promised.
Oh,
and he literally there was a gap between when papers from school were coming in to be graded. Now they dropped them off yesterday in the 8th, but I'll get through that and clear it. But as soon as that was the window of like 4 or 5 days where there was no classes, straight back in trying.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I started working the novel during Christmas break because I had 2 weeks of solid time to focus.
What genre are you exploring with the novel?
It's a fantasy. I like big fantasies like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones about big worlds. Mm-hmm. And usually there are wars and fights and stuff. This is the aftermath.
Okay.
This is, how do you pick up the pieces? How do you rebuild after all of this and do it from top down? The new leaders, the guy on the street, the guy who's got to clean up the rubble after the big battle. And is it really happily ever after, or is it meet the new boss, same as the old boss?
Very interesting. Now that does sound like a really great, fantastic take onto it as well. I'll look forward to it.
Yeah, thanks. I hope I get to knock it out this summer.
Awesome. Best of luck. Thank you so much for taking the time speaking with myself today. Hopefully we'll have another conversation in the future. And
happy to, Owen.
Fantastic. And best of luck with everything. And for everyone, if they want to follow Crazy 8, crazy8.com. Is there any other social media?
Crazy8press.com.
Oh, crazy8press.com. Apologies. And is there any other particular online social media handles or channels you can follow?
It's bobgreenberger.com for the website, and usually Bob Greenberger on most social media, Facebook, X, Blue Sky, whatever, wherever.
Awesome. So thanks once more, and best of luck ahead.
Thanks so much.
Many thanks again for listening to today's episode of Creator in Conversation. If you haven't already, please hop over to our YouTube channel and like and subscribe. There you'll find on occasion some video footage of some of the conversations that we have. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, please do leave a comment. We'd be happy to read through those comments as well and appreciate your feedback. And if you would like to recommend a particular topic, or if you would like to come onto the podcast and talk with us as well, feel free to email us at info@tascart.com. That's TASQART.com. Thanks once more to Bob Greenberger for coming along and sharing his insights with us today, and come back again for our next episode. Till then, this has been a copyright production of Macaulay Consultancy 2025.